the chat room. So we're just coming up to the top of the hour, and the topic today is the contact center of the future, and we'll be looking at what the contact center will look like in the year 2020, which sort of 2020 vision spins to mind when we're talking there. Initially, I thought, oh, that's an awfully long way away, and actually, you know, you work it out, that's just over 5 years.
Scarily close, actually, yes.
5 years and 4 months. So, you know, it sort of only seemed yesterday we were getting into the new millennium, and it's racing away from us. So delighted for everyone who's just joined us, and a lot of people have just recently dialed in. Delighted to be joined by Dr. Nicola Millard from BT, who's a customer experience futurologist, and you'll be talking through what the contact center of 2020 could potentially look like and what the impact of customer service is going to be. Then we're going to take some top tips and predictions from you in the audience, and then Mike Murphy from Interactive Intelligence. Mike's a regular speaker at our webinars.
Hi,
and Mike will be talking through technology predictions. But before we get into the agenda, just a little bit of housekeeping. callcenterhelper.com/chat is the chat room if you'd like to log in. A lot of people have logged in already. And if you'd like to leave your tips, predictions, and questions in the chat room, there is a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates for the best tip or prediction. And I know a lot of you do like to share these with your teams, so you can go in on the same link as you are for the replay. The chat room, very simple, no commercial messages, web addresses or emails, only through direct messages. And once you're logged in, you can download the webinar slides, just this little link here underneath the chat room icon. So what I'd like everyone to do is to log into the chat room, and I'm going to pose this question to you. In 1 or 2 words, how has your contact center changed over the past 5 years? So has it grown? Has it expanded? Has it shrunk? Has you added more channels? Just 1 or 2 words. How has your contact center changed over the next 5 years?
has it improved?
See what people are saying. Right, let's have a look at the results. Amanda says multi-channel. Miles says more channels. Jonas says a focus on quality. Lucy said we've grown and added more channels. Andrew, more channels, focus on live chat. Multi-channel growth, multi-channel. Kerry says it's grown. Wayne says we've added more channels. I'm getting strong more channels here. Growing on e-business channel. Web chat has been brought in, says Anisha. Roy says customer diversity. So that's quite an interesting one. Improved multi-channel with a focus on quality, says Inga. Richard, bigger and greater customer service. Dominic has said more non-voice channel growth. Streamlining of product offerings, more channels and more multilingual services, stronger interaction with processes, more video, way more video. A whole range of different ones there. James saying more market research, and Matic is saying personalization. So, Mike, it seems that multi-channel seems to be the feature we probably have gone, I guess, from the contact center, from the call center to the contact center.
Yes, I think we could say that, couldn't we? That we have actually made that move, and really from now on it should be the contact center, really. But yeah, certainly it's nice to see that. That's everything. That's going to certainly, in my view, and what I've got to share later is kind of builds on is that we certainly should have expanding, but absolutely sure. And if you like merging these into a much more sort of like consistent experience for your customer. Yeah, very changing times really from not too long ago.
Yeah, so quite a lot of change there. Interesting, some other things about personalization started to pop in there. Do you think we'll start seeing more personalized service as we go through, Nicola? I
think so, and I think that obviously there's that lovely big buzzword, big data. Now, I keep saying we've had big data for a long time, but actually the one thing that's really changed recently is the analytics tools that can help us to actually use that big data and actually make meaning from it, because actually having data is not actually that useful. It's much more around, you know, analysing the patterns and actually doing something meaningful with it. So, and obviously what I'm going to talk about, I think with the contact centre actually has quite a big role to play in that whole big data picture and the personalisation picture as well.
Yeah, I've noticed that big data now tends to have the word analytics put up
Yeah.
these days, so quite interesting. Right, let's have a little drill down on how the contact center has changed. I'm going to ask the question, what percentage of your traffic today comes from voice calls? So we'll have a look at how much multi-channel has come in. So if you'd like to vote, the answer is fairly straightforward. 0 to 19%, 20 to 39%, 40 to 59%, 60 to 79%, or 80 to 100%. So just like to vote on what percentage of your traffic today comes from phone calls or voice. Mike, any crystal ball that you'd like to do on?
Oh, I'd say it's still kind of between 40, maybe in the 60, 79. Maybe.
Okay.
I think it might even be higher than that.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's close the voting on this and share the figures up on the screen. Sample size here, 168 votes, and by far the biggest figure there is 60 to 79%. So quite a range there. We've got a small number that I think 8% there in total are under 40%.
Yeah.
Voice. So I don't know if these are sort of new generation of non-voice. Non-voice.
Indeed, digital care centres are springing up all over the place.
So let's do another. Now, what I'd like everyone to do is think forward 5.5 years to the year 2020, and I'd like you to think about in 2020 what percentage of your traffic is going to be phone calls. Now, this is going to be fascinating. I think Nicola's smiling as if she knows the answer already. But the one thing I think we all learned is forecasts are almost invariably wrong.
Indeed, which is why my crystal ball is unfortunately broken, and so therefore I kind of rely on research, I have to say, to answer my questions. So I'm very interested to see what.
So just bear in mind that a lot of people have said multi-channel. I'm probably expecting quite a big swing starting to happen here. Well, let's have a look at everyone who's voted. I'll just share the results. And wow, we see quite a substantial swing happening from predominantly sort of 60 to 80%. The big bulk there is happening in the 20 to 40% range.
Yep.
So be quite interesting to know whether that's because what we've seen so far is all channels have grown from what I can pick up on.
Absolutely, and I think that a lot of the research is showing that it's not a growth in one channel, it's a growth in all channels, and we're becoming increasingly omni-channel, I believe, is the latest buzzword. So I'm not sure what the difference between omni and multi is, but yes.
So if you think this is going to come through, do you think we ought to buy shares in touch typing schools or something? Is that going to be a key skill that we're going to need for?
Sometimes I hear that phrase.
So yeah, so some fascinating results on there. So I think there's some real food for thought. Right, I'm just going to hide that now. I'm going to introduce across Dr. Nicola Millard, and Nicola, you're going to be taking us through some ideas of what the way you think and your research shows the contact centre could be looking in 2020.
Absolutely, Jonty, and actually those of you who listened to the last Future Contact Centre cast that we all did, actually, I believe that was the one where Jonty was ringing lots of bells and buzzers, which was a tremendous amount of fun. So those of you who were on that particular very memorable webinar will know that we actually asked a few questions to contribute to this research. So this is a piece of research that we published, I guess it was probably about 2 months ago, and those of you that contributed to this, I think you contributed, I think we asked 3 questions on the webinar. So we put your data in the big amount of data that we got from all sorts of other sources. So this is an industry survey. It is a snapshot survey. We felt that those of you who've seen me before, we talk a lot about customer trends. We haven't asked the industry for a while what their opinion was of where they thought the contact centre was going. So any of you who were at Call Centre Expo in October last year in London, we may well have jumped on top of you and forced you to do a questionnaire. So we got quite a few questionnaires done at Call Centre Expo. We also worked very closely with the Call Centre Managers Association, both in the UK and also in Ireland, to get data from those guys. I will say that is the one bias of the data. There is bias on this data. That this is a lot of the respondents were actually call center or contact center managers. So I will point out the biases as we go along, but I think it's actually produced quite an interesting picture of where we think the contact center is going. And as you rightly point out, Jonty, 2020 is not that long away. And now I used to joke that actually the only thing that changed in contact centers were the carpets, and I think that has to change. And
I think a few of the ones I've been to recently, I don't think they've changed in quite a while.
Even the carpets haven't changed. Well, there we go. But I think when we look at the customer research that we regularly do in BT, we're seeing that customers are changing fundamentally in the way that they're placing demands on organizations. And actually that's got a huge impact on the contact center and actually is forcing us as an industry to start to think very differently. And I think there are two options for us. One is we get designed into obscurity, or two, we become incredibly strategic to the business. Now, as someone who's worked in the industry for maybe more years than I would like to actually mention, I would like the latter. So I would like contact centers to become really strategic, and I think we have an opportunity at the moment to change a lot more than the carpet. So that's the perspective in the research. The context of this kind of is interesting because we did a similar piece of research back in 1995, looking at some future visions of what seemed to be a long way away then, which was the year 2000. Wow. So we actually, on this particular piece of research, we asked a lot of agents and a lot of managers to workshop what they thought the contact center would look like. Now, I can't take a vote here, but I'm hoping that maybe one or two of you out there might actually have a contact center that looks like this, but I suspect actually the answer probably is you don't have a contact center that looks like this, because I think, although I think a lot of these visions are very valid, I think we were slightly ahead of ourselves in 2000. However, I will mention some of the things that we were thinking about in 1995. There is something that looks uncannily like an iPad there. I cannot claim that we invented it, but so we didn't invent the iPad, but certainly mobile technology was in the picture. We were looking at knowledge environments because increasingly we know that the contact center is having to deal with a lot more complexity. So we started to build knowledge actually into the walls and the ceilings and the floors. We were looking at agile environments, so the ability not just to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, but become untethered and choose potentially where you work. We had video built into the contact center. My personal favorite actually in terms of visions was the bed-based contact center, which oddly came from an agent. So we haven't quite got the bed-based contact center, but home-based contact centers are perfectly feasible now. And we were also looking at fantasy customer service advisors. So the fact that the advisor could be front-ended by an avatar of my choice, my fantasy customer service advisor, which in my case actually was George Clooney. Now George has yet to appear on any of my...
But data from Star Trek on the...
Yes, yeah, lovely 19
and
graphics.
There's a comment in from Kim in the audience who says that her contact centre looks like the one on the top right.
Oh, fantastic.
So Kim, it'd be interesting to...
Can I come and visit?
Funnily enough, purple hasn't taken off as a colour for headsets.
Well, you know.
If anyone has purple headsets, perhaps they'd like to let us know. In fact, they're all black and silk.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I think that...
These are very white, very bright red.
Oh, yeah.
Like, kind of funky colours.
Yeah, but I mean, not from the contact centre.
But we were looking at wireless basically there, and looking at untethering, and certainly a lot of my stuff around the contact centre was people just do stand up and wave their arms around a lot, stretch, and being in one sedentary position all day. I believe sitting's the new smoking, so we need to move around a bit more. Now, what we wanted to do with this piece of research was not do this. What we wanted to do was to get a snapshot of what people thought the contact centre was doing. So we asked 7 questions. As I said, we asked 3 of those on the last webinar. And we asked about what the contact centre was doing, who we needed as agents, what managers, what measures would be under, what channels, and also finally what technologies would be relevant for the year 2020. And this is what we found. So this is one we did ask on the webinar, what's the primary function. Now, I was very happy, in fact, to see that that the majority, just over 50%, were really seeing the contact center move into this complex problem-solving space. And obviously that's a consequence, and we can kind of see it already, that self-service is pushing away a lot of the easy transactional stuff, which hopefully leaves us in the contact center space to do the stuff that the customers can't solve themselves. Now, as a result, we're seeing this complexity reflected by maybe call volumes going down, but call handling times going up. So inevitably, you can see that there is tangible evidence of this complexity hitting the contact center. What did slightly depress me about these outputs, and as I said, there's a bias here because people, are often in their comfort zone in the contact center, that just under a quarter thought that there would be still a lot of inbound transactional routine calls. I'm not sure it will be a quarter. I'm hoping it will be dropping. Other things I'd like to pick up, complaint handling. Obviously, that's a particular type of complex problem solving, but it's particularly difficult to automate complaints. So I think that's very much central to what the contact center is going to be doing. Actually, the one that really intrigues me is the ability for the contact center to become a lot more proactive. And that's really around contact centers, rather than being managed by their demand, actually starting to manage their demand and become a lot more proactive, using multiple channels to do that as well. So we're seeing a little bit of traditional stuff coming through here, and I would say that some of the answers to these questions are rather conservative, and I like to push the boundaries a little further, but this is what the industry is telling us.
So do you think we'll see a different profile of who we recruit then, rather than sort of,
Good question, John.
Slide on this one I can see coming up.
Because oddly enough, that was the next question I asked. So this is all about, okay, if we've got this complexity, let's think about it logically. If we have real complexity coming in, is it logical to recruit the youngest, least well-paid, most junior people into an environment that is constantly churning? And actually the answer to that question is probably no. Actually, this sophistication we will require, and that's actually the reason why we called this survey Super Agent 2020, because we were speculating whether agents do actually require their underpants on over their trousers for this kind of work. Do they need to leap tall buildings because they've got lots of complexity being thrown at them? I don't think they do need superpowers. In fact, the three powers that do seem to be completely essential for agents in 2020, well, firstly, the ability to communicate may seem actually rather obvious, but linked with the complexity piece, the interesting one is that people that understand very complex things, and let's face it, products and services are not getting easier. They are, in fact, getting way more complex. In order to communicate complexity, you actually need a deep understanding in order to actually communicate simply to customers. So communication skills, to me, go hand in hand with things like the expertise on product and services. And obviously the other aspect of the complexity piece is almost being able to take the problems on as almost like project managers, so these sort of analytical and problem-solving skills. Because if we have complexity, sometimes we need to almost project manage this complexity. I like to describe it as sticking the fork into the spaghetti of internal process in order to actually solve, well, effectively become the customer's problem-solving champion. Empathy and resilience came out slightly lower, although I actually do think because of the complexity and inevitably some of the emotiveness coming into the contact center, that those are also quite essential skills. But we're not talking a kind of Mac job here by any means. It's a very complex professional job, and I think it's getting the recognition as such gradually across Europe. The next thing, I'm obsessed by measures. So measures drive behaviors, and I think that the wonderful thing that we're finding from the primary measures that people thought the contact center were going to be subject to in 2020 is that the old bugbear that I have around call handle time seems to become, thank goodness, less relevant, because it's not a customer measure, and the good news is that the customer measures are coming up trumps here. So customer satisfaction is still, people think is going to be an absolutely primary driver, which is brilliant, because that's a great customer measure. The one that surprised me, and I don't know why it did, because I've been talking about easy and effort for quite a long time, BT are doing an awful lot of work in this area, is that's the one that seems to be coming up behind customer satisfaction and tapping it on the shoulder. And I think there's some quite, I can go on for hours about easy and effort. I don't have the time today, but I think that there are a lot of operational reasons why easy is a good measure for the contact center, because you can operationalize that much easier than, say, Net Promoter, which seems to be going down in preference, mainly because it's very hard for the contact center to move someone up 1 point on the Net Promoter scale. It's very difficult to see, where they contribute. Right first time is obviously a very good process measure as well. It has impact on the customer, but that's much more an internal measure. But I'm glad to see that that's up in the top 3 too. So measures are getting a lot more customer-centered, which is great. In terms of channels, this was the one that probably surprised me the most. And actually, after the survey we've just done, it shouldn't do. But people thought that web chat would become the dominant channel. And it's quite interesting, when we did the interviews for this survey, people still seem to talk in terms of calls. And I'm not sure they mean calls in the phone sense, actually, but we know that phone is still a very accessible channel. It's a very useful channel, actually, and it's a universally accepted channel. So it's not dying completely, unlike email, which seems to be dying a slow death. I wish it was dying a quicker death, actually. But chat seems to be that there are so many reasons why it's growing. I keep saying my money is on it as a growth channel. I'm not sure it is going to actually surpass phone by 2020. I think it's going to give it a good run for its money, largely because customers find chat very easy. A lot of customers start online. Agents actually quite like chat. It's much less isolating than the phone. And also, obviously, the economics tend to go well with web chat when you look at things like concurrency. Social media, I think the contact center has got a huge role in social media, but I'm actually doing some research on social media at the moment. It tends to be a secondary rather than a primary channel for customers, and it's a public channel, which makes me rather uncomfortable sometimes if everyone wants everything in public. But I think that the contact center inevitably is going to be a hub for social media as well, particularly in the service space. And video is small but growing, and I think that inevitable devices with cameras on them tend to promote use of video through things like Skype and FaceTime.
The danger, I mean, web chat is becoming a very popular channel at the moment, but I've started to, I love using it, but I'm starting to get rather frustrated with it as a channel. I was on a 40-minute web chat the other day, and to sort out some problems with my TV from a well-known satellite company. It wasn't BT. As soon as we get high-speed broadband, I might be switching, Nicola. But it was quite frustrating because it's everything happens by kind of slow motion. So you ask a question, and about 2 minutes later you get a response.
Yes.
And then there was it was just a kind of web chat equivalent of blind transfer. And I've noticed a couple of times you explain a problem, we've got to transfer you.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any record of history. It's like, how can I help you again? And to my mind, that kind of should be in the technology. Now, whether people are trying to multitask too much, I don't.
There is an element of that. I keep saying that the secret of web chat is all in the design, so put it appropriately on pages, pop it up and down depending on what page people are on and what agents you have available. Skills-based, route it, absolutely, but I think it depends on the technology you're using, but actually it's perfectly feasible to transfer a chat session complete, so the agent can actually read what's gone before. So yeah, I think it's all in the design. The other thing is that obviously the ability to actually jump from web chat potentially to the phone should be also available. So if it's easier to do
that would be good.
By voice,
yeah,
do it by voice, for goodness sake.
Because I'm also starting to find with web chat, hold times are going up. So that you think I've waited about 10 minutes to get through on a web chat. And you're thinking, actually, it's getting easier to pick up the phone because you tend to get through quicker than that.
But I think that's inevitable, and I think one of the anxieties with social media is if you force people more in the social media channel, if you get more volume, it becomes less easy to control. So, it swings and roundabouts. The next one is really around the location of the centre, which was a controversial one, and I'm very depressed about this one, being somebody that's been talking about home-based call centres for a very long time, and we know they work. Just hasn't worked so well in Europe especially. I think the US is much better, and actually the US data we got from this, which wasn't very much US data, was showing that home-based is much more popular there. Unfortunately, these contact center managers find it very much easier to run a dedicated centralized contact center. It's easy for them to do. So I think this is in the comfort zone of a lot of the respondees. And yet, when we look at things like the integrated hubs, what I mean by that is actually integrating it into other offices or bank branches or retail stores, somewhere with a locked door, but not a dedicated contact center is becoming increasingly popular, and a mixture of home-based and field-based. And frankly, the technology is often pushed towards a very integrated, a very sort of more choice in terms of where you can put people, and the emphasis largely being, where are the people that can deal with the problem, rather than let's have a big warehouse somewhere in the outskirts of a city where we will recruit absolutely everybody. And I think that the technology is pushing away from that, but unfortunately the culture may not be. And I think home-based advisors have been very credible for a while, but the culture is holding us back often. Actually underlying a lot of this is technology, and this was an interesting one. To be honest, I was not surprised that intelligent skills-based routing came top, because I think the ability to route multiple channels to the right people, speed dating I call it, let's speed date the complex problem with the right advisor, wherever they happen to be, is absolutely key. So more intelligent skills-based routing came out top. Quite interestingly, mobile technologies came out second, and I was quite surprised, considering most people thought they were going to be in a dedicated, centralized center, as to why that was the case. And actually, when we analyzed the responses, the verbatims told us that largely the customers more mobile, therefore contact center has to get much more into things like apps, so in-app service, things like that. And also the fact that the contact center manager probably also needs to be a lot more untethered, and they shouldn't be sat at a desk or sat in their office either. So that iPad idea of people walking around the contact center, I think, is perfectly credible. The interesting one is things like big data and cloud, those very big hypey ones. I think A, have been hyped a lot, but B, I think a lot of people don't really understand what they are. And I'm not a technologist, I'm a psychologist. It took me absolutely ages to work out what cloud was. And now I understand it, and I think, wow, this is really incredible technology. It basically enables you to turn on an agent if they've got access to a browser. So, you can see that these technologies do underpin a lot of the things the contact center needs to do by 2020. The really interesting final question, though, was to managers, what the role of the manager will be, and do the managers also need to have their underpants on over their trousers and become super managers too? And this was the most overwhelming reaction, and actually one I think is quite an interesting one, because the overwhelming majority of people thought that they were going to become the customer experience guardians, and that's a really intriguing thing, because at the moment they're not. Largely they are the coach, the guru, the accountant, the quality auditor. All of those functions are sticking around, but actually the implications of the customer experience guardian actually goes to one of my particular problems with contact centers, actually, which is I can walk into any contact center manager's office and say, how many calls have you had? And they know. How long were those calls? They know. What were those calls about? I have no idea. So actually, again, big data and analytics, if we give different tools to the managers, they can actually start to figure out in real time some of the problems that are hitting the organization, and rather just taking those calls, actually start to become a lot more proactive. So if the website appears to be down, there's lots of calls, lots of contacts, lots of activity on social media, call the web guys and go, hi web guys, did you know the website is down? Oh, you do. Okay, when is it going to be restored? Because I need to be proactive with our customers. So it's a different model, and I think given the tools, actually, the contact center starts to become incredibly strategic rather than irrelevant. And there's a lot of talk at the moment around them becoming the relationship hub. They are the place where in real time, through multiple channels, customers are telling you about your products and your services. The thing is not just taking those calls, it's actually understanding the impact of that on the business. And that actually moves the contact center from that outside of the organization, a cost, into the beating heart of the organization and a real value add. And I hope that the future of the contact center is that, rather than being automated out of existence. So that was pretty much, that was a very fast view of the findings, and for those of you who did help us with the data, thank you very much. We appreciate that very much, and I think it does paint an interesting challenging, but also really quite nice picture of where we could be in the contact center industry.
Fabulous. I think there's some real food for thought in there, and I think the really thinking about the change, what's happening to the contact center manager, I think could be quite profound, because it's quite a different skill set, I think, that is going to be needed as we go forward. Well, we've had absolutely loads of questions, tips, predictions, and the like going through, so we'll jump through now and let's have a look at all of those coming through. Just a reminder that there is a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates for the best tip or prediction. So let's start with a question, interesting, almost rhetorical question. Is there evidence that contact centers can become a victim of their own success?
Yeah, and I think when we looked at the verbatims on the particularly the contact center manager answer, the big thing, if you're going to become guardians of the customer experience, you cannot do that without higher management support. And I think that then brings in the discussion as to how visible the contact center is in the boardroom, and whether the board and obviously the direct reports to the board actually value the contact center as, somewhere where it's a rich repository. Now, there is a danger that if they don't recognize that, the contact center will be ignored, but if they do recognize that, the pressure is on. The board is looking at what the contact center is doing, and I think they've got to step up to that mark. So yeah, it's a risk, but I'm hopeful the contact center can.
I also think this contact center becoming a victim of its own success might also be worth looking to see what you can do that could be automated and be put onto the website so people can self-serve. Now I know self-serve can also bring up call volumes, but I think if your contact center is growing rapidly, maybe because you're doing things right, maybe also because you're doing things wrong.
Yeah.
So quite interesting. Right, Robin thinks that job functions will require higher skill level with an emphasis on problem-solving autonomy, very much in line with your thoughts there, Nicola. Roy says that customers will choose automated services until an agent is the last option. Right, what's your take on that?
And I think that's okay, as long as the automation is smart and in tune with the customer. And I think we've learned a lot really over the last few years on the best way to deploy automation, and we've seen some great improvements, especially around speech, for example. Speech recognition has proven to be working much better than it has in the earlier days. But certainly, any automation must be in tune with the customer, or else we get an absolute.
I think you've got to you hit there. It's for the customer's choice, not the business's choice. And I see it too much happening the other way around. Focus on proactive mobile moments to be there for the customer anytime, any place. I think mobile certainly seems to be growing fast. Wayne talks about the use of augmented reality to provide specific context-specific contact. I don't know if this is tied in with the launch of Google Glasses in the UK. If you've got to spare £1,000.
Yes.
I don't mind a very odd-looking pair of spectacles that don't have prescription lenses in currently. Have you ever been tempted to buy a pair of Google Glasses? Or?
We have a few pairs. I keep saying I wore something not unlike Google Glass back in 1995, so this isn't a new technology.
But reality goggles they had there.
Well, no, actually, we have a strategic partnership with the guys at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So I met my first cyborg at MIT in 1995, and he had a pair of glasses with pretty similar, apart from the fact he had a very large laptop strapped around his waist, which it's 1995. That was about the only way he could kind of get the processing power. So.
Glass strikes me as just like a webcam sellotaped onto the side of your glasses. And in 2020, those people refusing to jump on the new technology bandwagon may have taken the decision to retire, leaving those more comfortable with advancing technologies to support. Whew, that's
well, certainly by 2020 we're likely to have 5 generations in the workforce, so that will include some of the traditionalists. But by 2025 those traditionalists will have retired for sure.
Yeah, true. More senior agents with advanced skills, but giving flexibility to work anywhere that suits them.
Absolutely.
Very much like the vision we have.
Of agents, why not?
And Rebecca says, I think there'll be a shift of transactions to social media.
Yeah, well,
social that really suits transactions, is it?
Well, we'll see, but I keep saying, you have to pay attention to this public-private thing, and I think certain things are better suited to social media than you wouldn't want to discuss your finances necessarily in a public place, for example. And the regulator in the financial services industry doesn't want you to do that either, actually.
So here's this is almost like an A-level question. How do you see communicational skills being influenced by customer care via social media, Mike?
Oh my gosh.
Let you do this one.
Gosh, I'm struggling, Dorothy.
Well, shall I answer that? Because we have, obviously, in BT we've been doing social media customer care for a while, and I would say the one thing we have learnt is to be human, speak the customer's language, talk, obviously things like social media are very constrained in characters, so you have to be brief as well. So, yeah, I think it's all about providing a very personalised, kind of chatty service rather than being very formal and saying, "Dear Mr. Customer, regards." You have to talk the customer's language.
Indeed. So we've got a tip by Christoph saying, in the future we need to have agents trained on how to look on video. Mike, I guess putting a webcam in front of people is
natural consequence, really, of emerging technology. And,
they need to look like George Clooney.
I'll try. But it is, we kind of have become, we had like Dress Down Fridays years ago, and then that kind of evolved into kind of Dress Down every day. But maybe this is the case where we have to get a bit more smarter, really, in the context of being visible in the contact center, and the thing that to me is perfectly healthy.
I quite like this conversation here from a tip from Kenneth, which we in fact, Mike, we were talking about this earlier, about multiple chat sessions. Handling multiple chat sessions will be prone to more errors and lack of concentration by errors. What's your view on multitasking of web chat, Mike?
Yeah, so it's we are humans, and in a way, being able to sort of handle multiple sort of chats at the same time it's technically there, absolutely. But we are humans, and we have to sort of concentrate on what we're doing. And if you have too many, so like in-play conversations, yes, you can get confused and you can make mistakes, and that's going to come across as unprofessional.
Yeah. So
really, these are sort of like configuration settings, if you will, that needs to be put into place to manage that kind of circumstance very carefully.
Yeah.
But yes, there are economic benefits, if you like, of having multiple sessions, but there are risks. And here's an example of some of the risks and consequences.
And certainly the time lag, as I was talking on the call earlier, of waiting 2 minutes for a response, that I think was purely just someone else was being answered in that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is complexity goes up in chat as well. And I keep saying, and we work a lot with health services, you don't want to accidentally tell a man he's pregnant if you're not paying attention to multiple chat sessions. So as complexity goes up, the number of concurrent sessions go down. So you maybe are only doing 2 rather than I have seen 10. Don't think that's workable.
Right, so let's look at web chat. Do you currently offer web chat in your contact center? The answers are yes, no, we're planning to, or no. So just be interested, just get a snapshot of where is web chat within the contact center right now. So just those coming through. Mike, what do you think is going to be the most popular answer?
Oh, yes.
I think you may well be right on that. Let's have a look at the
short answer, but
let's have a look at the results there and share them up on the screen. Pretty evenly. Yes, it is the most popular one, 38%. So actually, a lot of room for improvement. A third of people are planning it currently, and 29% are no. So certainly, we've talked to today. If you're looking for web chat, 2 features that might be worth looking: the ability to do a decent handover and the ability to move between multiple channels as well. So what we're now going to do is we're now going to move across and have a look at some a question for you, which is, what is your biggest problem that you face if you're operating with web chat? What is the biggest problem you have with web chat currently in your contact center? So if you could type that into the chat room, callcenterhelp.com.
That could be your biggest problem, the ability to type faster.
We're touch typing.
Yes, absolutely. Back to touch typing.
In that company. Right, I'm now going to pass the baton across to Mike Murphy from Interactive Intelligence, and Mike is going to take us through some ideas on what's likely to be happening to technology in the next 5 or 6 years. And this some of this will be predictions, and I guess some of it is going to be some things you've probably got already in the pipeline there.
A little bit, Jonty, yes. So really very timely. We've had our customer event at HQ about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And at that event, we actually launched some new functionality. So welcome everybody to something very, very new, very, very different from Interactive Intelligence called PureCloud. And what was very nice about the timing of that becoming available while I was there watching the launch, I was kind of thinking about this event and thinking, yeah, this is perfect content really to share with the webinar. And you know, you recognize Interactive from being very much involved with Contact Center. We've been doing this kind of for 20 years now, really, writing good software for that particular industry. And you will not be surprised with the sort of list on the right about the kind of things that we're putting into this new generation of capability. So the multi-channels, the social customer service, voice self-service, you know, etc. You can kind of see those things that you would expect. But there are some interesting new functionality which is coming through, which I kind of wanted to share with you specifically today, just to kind of stimulate some ideas and get some sort of debate really about how we think this may or may not fit, if you like, in the future.
And just before we dive into that, Mike, we've got some comments back on what the issues with web chat.
Yes.
So messages that not unified into the contact center platform is one, separate reporting is another, quality control. Customers not expecting that there may be a queue for web chat. It's quite interesting. And get the right level of getting the right agents with the enhanced level of soft skills to recognise the unspoken need for customers.
Back to those communications.
And
kind of been here before, haven't we, with kind of call handling many years ago?
And
very similar.
Carl says not knowing how casual to be with customers. Should be casual, should be formal. And Vicky says conveying our brand through the web chat responses, which is
just as an aside, BT actually now has a head of brand language. So we're actually very much concentrating down on how people should speak to customers in terms of the language they speak, and making that a brand issue. So
fantastic.
So Mike, do you want to share some of your predictions then?
Yeah, am I on display?
Yes, you are.
Great. So yeah, just really, having launched this new capability was quite interesting sort of themes really that I've actually kind of spotted already dovetail nicely with Nicola's content earlier. So that's proven to be very interesting. So the first one really was around new innovative ways of matching customers with agents. Okay, so you can imagine the call queue is coming through or the chat queue is coming through. And typically today we kind of route those on a kind of linear basis, like next available agent. We often overflow, if you like, work from groups who are busy to maybe outsourcers or maybe other departments that can handle the contacts for us. This generates lots of reporting challenges, and we're kind of often tricking our systems to do things they weren't really designed to do. But the point is we kind of deliver often ordinary experiences for our customers and nothing very much of a personal nature. So the good news is that we're looking to change that with something which we call criteria and user-driven matching. Okay, so the idea here isn't about just routing the next contact in queue or assigning the next available agent. It's more about making the best possible match between the customer and the agent. So just to kind of build on that a bit more, we have this notion called pure match. So we're looking at sort of the customer's criteria. So we're thinking about here like the reason for the call or the media tab they're using or their priority. You know, are they a VIP customer or not? Maybe the language that they're using, the location, those type of things. And then blending that with the agent attributes such as, you know, what's their language capability, their skills, what media can they handle? Can they handle 15 chats or not? Is it a case where their location is important or their interests perhaps might be important? So this sort of level of more depth, if you like, and sophistication is starting to appear. But then don't forget, we are running a contact center here, so we have to be economically savvy. So the strategy of the center might be, okay, guys, so we've got to keep to a service level, and we've got to maintain this kind of, you know, financial success, and stop being a cost center, and start actually contributing to the value of the business. So in that sense, the sort of strategy element helps to sort of keep everybody in check, customers and agents. But the point is, we have this best match scenario. And that's just kind of one example of what we see as kind of emerging functionality for the future. And the second one is actually one that we touched on last year, and we've now kind of called it social customer service, where your browsing customer is kind of solving the problem themselves using your sort of your online tools to help them sort of frequently asked question type tools. They actually get to the point where they actually need some help, and we're then able to sort of present them with suitable agents with the right skill who've kind of handled this kind of question before. And we're actually publicly showing photographs and wait times and scores that other customers who've had the same interaction with customers, the scores that those customers gave that particular agent. And the beauty here is this is kind of building very much on social media. Okay, so we're used to today to kind of sharing our sort of performance, sharing our capabilities. All we're doing here is kind of bringing that into the contact center, so it's not that radically different. But the point is, once I select the agent I want to connect with, I can then have a choice of how to do that connection. And then once let's say I want you to call me back, Mr. Contact Center, and I want to speak to Raoul in this case, we have a great sort of conversation. He solves my problem. I'm a happy customer, and straight away I can make some smart feedback into the sort of operation, sort of complete the loop, shall we say, and put some more rating against that Raoul agent for the next time. So just a very different way of looking at, if you like, personalization, shall we say, and that's sort of like an unprecedented personalization, if you like, for the customer.
Yeah. Do you think contact centers are going to love customers rating individual agents and that being shown on the website? And
well, I don't think we should be challenged by it, Jolty. Absolutely not. And if we are, I think then, okay, what are we being challenged about?
Yeah.
Okay, so where am I feeling uncomfortable about this? I need to fix that and make myself comfortable about this and my people.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think the future is going to be different. They could very, very clearly shared how that could look like.
Yeah.
And these are the things that we think are going to become quite important for personalization and get away from the drudgery of just the same old contact center, same old questions, frustration. That has to go away. Otherwise, people will just move away and buy their stuff elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
But the next point really is more about sort of colleagues and the kind of tools we have just working together as colleagues. And if you can imagine, today's users, we're kind of used to pretty complex tools that are quite sophisticated and got lots of detail in them and bundles of information. But really, if you look at the next generation, the younger guys coming through, they've kind of been trained on things like Amazon to do their shopping and Netflix to do their movie watching and sort of like social media to do sort of like their socializing. So they have very sort of different views about information. They just want the information that matters now and don't pollute me with sort of information that's irrelevant to me at this moment. And in that sense, we're kind of seeing new tools, if you like, for us all to work with, be us sort of like agents talking with customers or just actually interacting and talking to each other as colleagues in the organization. So, very much web-based design tools, very simple, very clean, very sort of intuitive, if you will, but also the same would apply for management tools, for administration tools. So nothing here about the old-fashioned sort of tech clients that we've kind of been working with to date, getting much more to the flexibility that the web will bring to businesses. So that notion really, better satisfaction for colleagues and all in all a better experience for the customers really should follow through on the back of that. So just to kind of taking it outside of just the contact center. The next one really is about mobile, and we kind of touched on this earlier, and how can we get better collaboration? And this one resonates for me quite a bit because I'm a kind of a virtual worker and I need my sort of tech contact from time to time to help me with sort of customer-specific questions. And when I can't reach him, I just need to have this technical question answered. So often I have a situation like this guy sitting in the desert. I just want to get through to the guy who can help me, but I actually can't reach him right now. So we've kind of come up with a very different way, if you like, of having an enterprise directory. This is something which is very much around everybody in the organization is part of this, and everybody in the organization has a profile page, basically, very much like a social media page, if you will. So very customizable, lots of hierarchical views. So my little problem where I'm stuck trying to get my tech question answered, I can see straight away where Tim's colleagues, whether they're available, because I know they can answer the question, and where they are right now, and yes, I can reach him, message him, give me the answer, he answers my question, and within minutes I can carry on with my work. I haven't had to stop and leave messages and call me back and that kind of boring routine.
And do you see these skills here? I mean, I quite like being able to search internally on a skill.
Yes.
Would these likely be integrated within the contact center as agent skills as well?
When I talked about the attribute matching with the customer criteria earlier, this is where those attributes are stored and updated.
Yeah.
Okay, so depending upon your role in the organization, your attributes are then sort of like fleshed out in more detail.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is it's, if you like, all very much like a social media-based design.
Yeah.
Okay, very friendly, very intuitive, and absolutely designed for mobile devices. So it's more a case that more of the time you spend in mobile devices than you actually will with sort of desktop machines, really. Think about the Surface. Think about the iPad.
Yeah.
Why can't they be things that we use to do our work in?
Yeah.
No reason whatsoever. So as we kind of evolve these kind of tools, we see this as being very, very, very important the success of the so like the 2020 timescale.
Yeah.
So just interesting, if you like, that is just how the sort of circle has changed. So better productivity, better connections, if you like, with employees. So altogether, we should be a more lined up and sort of professional organization as far as how we appear to our customers. So this one now, if you like, is getting a little bit into the techie world, really. So bear with me as I tiptoe through this, and we see how we do. But if you can imagine so like somewhere in your contact center today, there is a whole, data center or comms room of buzzing stuff that's whirring away, doing great sort of things on your behalf to make a contact center work correctly. However, it's kind of challenging to run that in the longer term, and often you have sort of points of failure in there, and it's very complex because there's tons of different vendors in there all kind of working together to make it deliver what you expect. And also it's very costly because it's got lots and lots of machines kind of running your application. And typically then you're relying on vendors, often single vendors, sometimes they're small ones. Very hard to kind of customize this kind of environment, and very challenging to integrate with information systems. And everybody, this is typical of the sort of contact center world that we live in today, technology-wise. It's very, very complex and very, very heavy lifting. So the sort of future that we see really is where we as a software company will actually draw from the cloud the sort of processing power that we need at the time that we need it, when we need it. So in that sense, people like Amazon Web Services have suddenly emerged to be able to provide processing capability globally on demand, which is very, very interesting. If you look at things like how the open source world has kind of evolved, the coding of capability, like, traditionally Interactive is very much a Microsoft company. You could say our sort of core operating system for 20 years has been Microsoft based. Well, guess what? Next generation is going to be Linux based, which is absolutely an open source based tool. So we're kind of leveraging this strength, if you will, of kind of best practice into our go forward technology. The sweet spot though for yourselves as sort of center managers and in the contact center space is rapid availability of new functionality. That's the real sort of change for all of us. So where today we're typically waiting maybe a year or sometimes two for the next release of functionality in our centers, often then they're kind of augmented with maybe once a quarter there might be an update perhaps that makes things a little bit better. We'll be getting to the point in the future where new functionality will be coming through pretty much every other week, and there's no reason why this cannot be happening. And if you can imagine how contact centers are kind of fast-moving in the way that they sort of articulate themselves to the customers or differentiate themselves to the customer, this will really help to sort of leverage that and sort of enhance that and enable that, so that organizations can very quickly sort of deliver and sort of, if you like, guarantee, shall we say, great sort of experience differences, if you like, customer by customer. And we're very excited about those kind of opportunities that we see coming through, which are very much sort of released to us on the back of this new generation technology. So just to kind of, put that into another context, think about unlimited scalability. So a single platform as big as your company needs to be, hundreds of thousands of users, 10 or 15 users, it does not matter. Very reliable, very secure, very fast deployment. And then if you can imagine, like I mentioned before, continuous access to new functionality. That's what we kind of see, if you like, as the architecture of the future. So just wrapping those up really. So we talked about matching customers with agents, kind of new ways of criteria matching, improved tools for us as colleagues, whether we're agents or whether we're back office colleagues, better collaboration with mobile, very much on the back of that rich directory that we showed, and then this new generation sort of background architecture which will enable a very different experiences to be delivered to our customers. So that's kind of where we're thinking, John, that the 2020 contact center might look. And I think, based upon Nicola's content, there's some interesting parallels there.
Yeah, I certainly love the interaction matching based on sort of
criteria.
I think that
speed dating again.
A lot
Speed
further.
dating.
Yeah, into an internal social network as well, because that's
obviously qualified speed dating. Sorry.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
yeah.
all speed dating is qualified, isn't it?
Well, let's go across now and have a look at then some more top tips and questions from the audience. We've got absolutely buckets of them here, so we'll sort of plow through them. Someone says, I could imagine service centers in 2020 are not primarily located at a certain place. They can be used omnichannel in every combination simultaneous that can make sense for the customer. Customers may need support at any place, so we'll use their ubiquitous communication infrastructure, but nevertheless I believe the status quo will change very smoothly. with some more channels coming through there. So
yeah, and I think that that rather depressing one around the single contact center, you know, the non-distributed one. I think that there was a quote under that saying, quite rightly saying that actually the infrastructure's there for the distributed center. It's not necessarily there for the centralized center, beg your pardon, rather than the distributed center. So it may be beyond 2020 some of the really creative things that we can do with distributed workforces.
And Tony says more subscription cloud-based contact centers will become the norm. I guess that very much ties in with the point you've raised there, Mike. The bigger challenge will be influencing everyone to become part of the new culture for the 2020 contact center. Focus on the people.
Yep.
So never losing sight of the people. Guy said an opinion. Are we not in danger perhaps of trying to understand the contact center in terms of what we understand today and the current model of delivery instead of trying to understand what the model might become? For example, we may dismiss things like Snapchat, which I don't know how old Snapchat is, but I mean it must only be about a couple of years.
It is, yeah, less than that, I think.
But is the idea of impermanence potentially something we need to think about with a degree of seriousness?
And that's why we do a lot of the customer research that we do as well, to try and figure out, you know, how are customers moving, because inevitably they move much faster than we do. And I think, you know, as I said, the constraints of the research we did was that a lot of people that we asked are actually in that current contact center model.
Yeah.
Which is why we like doing a combination of things, and out of that combination we can start to guess where the trends are going.
I think it's quite interesting when we look at the future, like with the iPad that you had on your screen. You know, if we'd have done that perhaps, you know, when you did that after, you know, 5 years after you did it, we're still nowhere near. And all of a sudden, some of the ideas are still not there now, but other ones are. It's quite fascinating what does and what doesn't.
This is true, and I think one of the guys from MIT that was over in the UK with us at Astral Park, our R&D facility last week, summed it up by saying the future's a compass, not a roadmap. We know the general direction, we don't necessarily know the specific path.
So Mike Kim said more crowdsourcing of customer service, customers helping customers.
Like super self-service, really, isn't it? Like, in that sense.
Like the Microsoft valued professional.
It works really, really well in a technical forum. It works less well in financial services, for example. But I know we have guys on our forums that give us, actually there's one guy that gives us around 39 hours a week of free consulting, effectively. He loves helping customers.
I've a cautionary tale. Sitting down so many hours each day is, according to many scientists, just as dangerous as smoking. The physical workplace and the way of work will have to change. I think we'll see more creative contact center who focus on staff's health.
Absolutely, I agree, and I am doing a whole other project on the future of work, which is very much looking at that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Interesting.
But was it 14 years ago? I think, Jody, was I was in Stockholm, and I was walking around contact centers which had the stand-up desks. Okay. Now we have a colleague next door. She's a German lady, and she has a stand-up desk, but it's the only one in the room.
Yeah.
So there's a culture thing here where, you know, we got to catch up here in the UK with to why can't we stand up at desks? It kind of makes your work a bit better.
And we've got lots of wearable fitness devices coming along as well, so we can start to monitor that stuff too.
Amanda says customers will self-serve to find a quick or easy solution, but agree with Dr. Millard. Complex problems will be resolved by an agent at the end of the phone. I think you'll probably see quite a polarization between self-service and complexity. Mandy says, I think jokingly, I may have to close my contact center for maybe an hour a day to force customers to self-serve and find so much of it easier. I think, Mandy, you might need to be putting a few more frequently asked questions on the page there. As customers have become more comfortable with technology, that will lead to a greater non-agent contact shift. And let's just take a quick question before we end this part of it. Sales through service is a key skill right now. What are the predictions for sales skills with agents? Mike, do you want to have a guess at what you think is going to happen to agents' sales skills in the future?
Yeah, I think they will have to evolve. And if you actually, when I see omnichannel, I kind of see this notion of being able to kind of browse in a store and then go online and then come back to a store. That to me is kind of like that sort of semi-practical, semi-virtual. And I kind of see, if you will, that the sort of sales skills will have to kind of come into the contact center because that will be part of the omnichannel. So absolutely, yeah, I think it'll be it has to be there, if you will, as part of their upskilling.
And I suppose as we get more and more to self-serve doesn't really lend itself to selling skills particularly.
Well, again, if you look at things like chat, we're seeing if you position the button in the right place, and if you've got a customer looking online, they're not sure they press the button, they get through to a good salesman with a very deep understanding of that product. We're seeing a 70% sales conversion rate.
Yeah.
So yes, you can sell very, very effectively, but again, it's in the design.
Yeah. No, it's at the right moment. I've had that with holiday companies. Yeah. Oh, right. Now, can I get this type of room, or can I get the two rooms close to each other with the children be next to it rather than at the other end of the hotel? Very important. Right. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. So in one or two words, what did you like best about today's webinar? Would be interesting if you could just jot that into the chat room in one or two words. What did you like best about today's webinar? What you learned? What was your favourite prediction from it? So just please type that into the chat room. Just a reminder, slides are going to be available on Call Center Helper. If you go to callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars, where you can watch the replay. And just it remains for me to say, we've got some live sessions coming up during the summer, callcenterhelper.com/live chat. And just like to thank our two speakers. So Nicola Miller, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And Mike Murphy. Thank you. And thank you to everyone in the audience. This is our summer break, and we'll be back with our next webinar on the 14th of September. Thanks then, everyone, and goodbye. Goodbye.